friends, it's Julie. Welcome back to Row & Co Farms. So today is the day that I am getting my freeze dryer. I'm so excited. I've been waiting on this for years, literally years, I swear. So we have decided to purchase it at a local store. It's about an hour and a half away from us. And yeah, so I have made it to the store and I'm gonna go in and see what they got. I called them, I checked before I came, I made sure they had inventory. They had 2 large freeze dryers in stock, and I asked them to please hold one for me, and they did. So I'm going in and I'm gonna go get it. So I'll be back. Well, I made it back. I've got my freeze dryer in the back of the truck. I'm gonna have to wait for my husband to get home so we can unload it, because it is way too heavy for me by myself, and might have to get my son also to help us because it's pretty heavy. But I have some accessories in the back of my truck and I'm gonna take those in and I'm gonna unpack them. All right, well, we got to the freeze dryer into the pantry, and now I need to unpack this massive box. What is this? This is part of our freeze dryer. Oh, this is aloe vera gel. That's for sunburns. Here, come here and look at the freeze dryer. Do you want to see? There it is back there. It's huge. We still have to do some adjustments to it, but I was just going to unpack the box and all the instructions really quick. Harper wants some almonds first. Okay, so the box comes with all kinds of accessories. This is the biggest part, is the vacuum pump. This is what actually suctions everything down in there and removes all of the moisture. So this is like the most critical piece of the whole thing. This is an oil filter, and this is oil, and this is all part of the pump system. This machine is an impulse sealer. I think this has to do with the Mylar bags and being able to seal the Mylar bags, but I'm not positive. Then we got oxygen absorbers. We got Mylar bags. Sorry about the dog. So we have 1 set of metal trays. And I told you that I got the second set of trays here and the set of lids for the trays. And then let's see what else is here. So instruction manual, owner's manuals, troubleshooting guides. And then here, I guess this is just some of the stuff to hook the power up, and I'm assuming this has to do with water, so we'll see. All right, so I'm gonna get in here and start setting some stuff up and see what I can get started. So this is the actual machine itself. I haven't even plugged it up yet. It comes with this drain line attached to the side. And then this is the inside where you put your trays. And then this is the little computer screen here at the top where everything is digitized, and that'll come on when I get it all plugged in. Okay, so plan B. This is where I was going to put the freeze dryer. That's where I had it set earlier, but once you hook all the hoses and the cords and stuff up to it, it just wasn't going to fit back there. So we have moved it up here to the front. We have attached a piece of wood here that extends the shelf out a little bit so that it can sit kind of sideways here, and that way we'll be able to access the front of the machine and all of the cords and everything. And then the pump is behind it. So this is where you walk into my pantry now, which is not the most pretty thing to look at, but I don't care. Okay guys, so I do need to give you an update on the freeze dryer. So we did run into a little bit of a problem while setting up the freeze dryer. It was unexpected and it really took us by surprise. And so when we went to turn everything on, the freeze dryer did not turn on. There was no power going to the unit. We were a little bit freaked out. We started checking all of our outlets. We checked everything on our end, read through the directions again, excuse me, and we just could not figure out what was going on. So at that point, I had a huge just pit in my stomach. I was like, what have we done? This is gonna be just a big piece of junk. That is not what happened. It's okay. We did contact the company. They were wonderful. They told us exactly what to do. We did have to take the back of the machine off and the side, and had to get in there, and one of the wires had become disconnected or had not been connected at the factory, not sure which, doesn't really matter, but it was one wire that had become disconnected. We fixed that, we put everything back together, and it worked beautifully. So then we moved on and started the process of doing the functional testing and everything. So I did just want you guys to know that, because it was a huge part of our process, and I got really scared and worried that I had made a big mistake in my purchase. I was really concerned that I had bought a piece of junk, and I do not think that now, because I'd had a good experience with their customer service team. I've had a good experience now with the machine itself, because it has started functioning exactly like it was supposed to. It was just that one thing. And so anyway, I just wanted to tell you guys that, so that you were aware of what situation we had with the machine, and that so far everything has been fine since we've remedied that one wire. So yeah, so far so good. Let's move on. Okay guys, so we have our freeze dryer set up finally. Everything is done. Really happy with where it's setting, and it is currently going through its initial batch, which is bread. They want you to just put regular sandwich bread in there, and first batch is bread. So it's currently going through that cycle. It will take probably a full 24 hours. Generally, they say it runs from between 24 to 48 hours depending on what you're doing. So I'm just going to let that run and make sure everything works like it's supposed to. And then I'm going to go ahead and be preparing what my first batch of stuff is going to be, and it's going to be some onions. Those onions that we went through the pantry and found earlier that needed to be dealt with. And so we're going to go ahead and get those chopped up and put on some trays. These are the trays right here, and we'll put those into the freezer and go ahead and let those start getting cold and getting frozen before we ever put them into the freeze dryer. That will just speed up the process a little bit on the freezing part of the process. So essentially what happens with the freeze dryer is initially this whole entire chamber in here just gets really, really cold, and it freezes everything inside the chamber, all of the food. And then once it does that, then the vacuum pump comes on and it suctions out all of the moisture that is in the food. And so essentially you're left with a frozen but dried food, and then you can take it out and it's shelf stable as long as you put it into, you know, an airtight container with an oxygen absorber. So yeah, I'm really excited to use this and see how far we can take our harvests now that we can freeze dry and use this as well as our other preservation methods. So I've chopped up these 5 trays of onions, and I'm going to go put these into my freezer so that they can go ahead and start getting cold for the freeze dryer. Okay guys, so I'm getting ready to do my very first trays of onions. They are pre-frozen. I started them yesterday, and the freeze dryer has gone through its initial freeze cycle, and we should be ready to put those into the freeze dryer in just a second and start our time. I'm not sure how long these will take, probably somewhere in the vicinity of 24 hours or so. since they're already frozen ahead of time. So let's get them loaded up. So initially you just turn the system on and it cools the vacuum chamber in here for 15 minutes to get it really cold. And so far we're at 13 minutes. So in 2 more minutes, this screen will indicate that it's time for me to put our trays inside the chamber here. Okay, so it's giving us the indication to go ahead and load the food into the freeze dryer. So let's get that done. Okay, so I just have to close the drain, which is at the back side here. Press continue, and it starts, the process starts by freezing. I don't know if you can see that. There it is. So it starts by freezing, and it detects how long it needs to get it to the right temperature. So you basically don't have to do anything at all. You just let it run, and when it's done, it's done. So yeah, right now it's at 56 degrees. I know it's hard for you guys to see that, but it just immediately, the temperature starts to drop in there and it gets it down way below freezing. And then it'll start to do the vacuum process and the drying process. So we'll come back when it's done. All right, friends. So the onions are out of the freeze dryer. They look like little styrofoam onions. That's how they feel. Like, could just crush them, like, and they're just powder. It's really neat. So I've just kind of stacked them up here. We've got a few trays. It took 31 hours in total for it to do these 5 trays, and that was with me pre-freezing the onions. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these put into a mason jar with a oxygen absorber so that these will stay fresh, and we're gonna just keep them for fresh eating, I think. But yeah, they're just so light and fluffy. Very interesting. Hello friends. I wanted to do some follow-up with you on the freeze dryer and the things that I have been freeze drying over the past week or so. I love this machine. I really, truly do. So I wanted to show you guys some of the stuff. Look at all these jars back here behind me, things that I have been able to preserve that I normally would not be able to preserve this way. So I'm really excited about this. So let's start right over here. These are freeze-dried onions. So I have been able to take onions and chop them up into just normal size, a normal dice that you would use, you know, in any recipe. These are raw onions. We dice them up. We put them into our trays. I'll show you the trays. I know you guys have seen these trays before. We put them into our trays and we put them into the freeze dryer, and the freeze dryer did its thing. So now we have these, basically they're almost like styrofoam. That's how they look and feel. And these are good for 25 years. As long as they stay in their jar with the oxygen absorber and they stay vacuumed down, they will be good. Now, when you open the jar, it does have a bit of a shelf life at that point. They're still gonna last a while, but you have to start using them. So yeah, but we can use these in any kind of recipe that we would normally use onions in. You just take out the amount you want. You put them in a bowl of cold water for a little while and let them rehydrate, and then you use them just like you would a normal raw onion, and they rehydrate into the same consistency as your onion would be. It's so crazy, guys. I'm gonna have to show you an example of that. I'm gonna do a video of some of the ways that you do the rehydration process. But I just wanted to show you in this video some of the stuff that we have actually been able to freeze dry. In these jars right here, these are some of our farm fresh eggs. This has been the most incredible thing right here. So in these 4 jars, this is about, in each jar is about 2 dozen eggs. So I just took the eggs. These are raw eggs. We scrambled them up. We poured them into the trays. I did pre-freeze the trays in my deep freezer before I put them into the freeze dryer, just to give the freeze dryer a little bit of a head start. And yeah, and we have now freeze dried eggs. There are some oxygen absorbers in these jars, but yeah, this will keep our eggs for up to 25 years if we wanted to. I don't think we'll be storing things for that long. We'll be using most of these things throughout the year, and in times when we may not have a bunch of eggs available to us from our chickens, or when we don't have a bunch of onions fresh available from our garden, we can use our freeze-dried onions. So yeah, the eggs are blowing my mind, guys. I love the eggs. I also did a batch right here of different herbs. I did some basil, some thyme, some cilantro, and some rosemary, and they all turned out fantastic. And I just, I didn't put oxygen absorbers in these because these are things that I'm going to go ahead and be using right away, but I just wanted to test the machine out and see what it could do with herbs. So now that I know, this is how I'm going to be storing my fresh herbs from the garden from now on. I'm going to be putting them into bags, Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, so that they'll stay in the dark. And when we do take them out, they're going to be incredibly fresh and delicious. They're going to look as fresh and green as the day that they came out of the garden. I mean, if you look at this thyme, it looks beautiful. It's nice and green and fresh. The basil is the purple basil, so it's going to look a little darker than normal basil, but it looks delicious. Everything just looks so good. This is the cilantro, and look how bright green that is. I have some stems in there with it, but it still looks fantastic. So next up, we did some of our red noodle beans that we've been growing in the garden. So they did discolor just slightly, and I think that's just from freezing them. When I took them out of the freezer, they looked a little bit less, they looked more dark purple rather than red like they did initially, but they freeze dried fantastically. So these are raw, I'm calling them green beans, so raw beans, and you just, you just take out what you need, you rehydrate them in some cold water or warm water, either one. Cold water just takes a little bit longer, and then you can use these and cook them just like normal. I really can't say enough about the freeze dryer. I'm really loving it. I've got more stuff going in there right now. We're doing a batch of dairy items. So I did some ice cream sandwiches, just some store-bought ice cream sandwiches. I heard a lot of people talk about doing some ice cream sandwiches, so we tried that. We also have 2 trays of sour cream, just store-bought sour cream. That's as a test, because I've been told that sour cream is a really good thing to try in there, because you just powder it up, and then when you need sour cream in a pinch, you just add water. I'm really excited about the sour cream. And then I also made some yogurt bites for my grandbabies. So I'm really excited about those too, because I just basically used a piping bag and did little drops of yogurt onto the trays, and then we froze them, and now now everything went into the freeze dryer. The ice cream sandwiches were frozen when they went into the freeze dryer already, so that they're not melting. And the intention with the ice cream sandwiches is that you eat them in their dried state as a treat. You don't rehydrate those. You just eat them. You eat them as they are, and they're supposed to be like this light and fluffy. Think about your marshmallows in like a Lucky Charms or something like that. If you eat that, that's kind of the texture that you're going to get from ice cream and marshmallows, is that kind of crunchy type texture, crunchy but sort of chewy type texture. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I just really wanted to share that with you guys. And I'm going to put links down below for the freeze dryer, where I got it. It is a Harvest Right. There is a link, and I do get some commission from that if you do decide to use that, and I really appreciate it if you do. But yeah, the freeze dryer, it's a big investment, and we did pay for our freeze dryer. This is not a paid advertisement for them. This is just me saying I love it, because we're going to be using this every single day, literally year round. I have not stopped using this freeze dryer since I got it. My husband's like, what's going on? Why are you doing all this freeze drying? I was like, because that's what I got it for. We're going to freeze dry all kinds of things. I mean, you can do leftovers, you can do soups, you can do stews, you can do raw food, you can do cooked food. You pretty much, there are hardly any limits to this thing. There are a few. You can't do fats. This is not intended to like dehydrate a fat. You can't do butter, and you can't do, you know, lard or tallow or anything like that. It's not for that. You can't do honey or sugar, really sugary based things necessarily. So there are a few limitations, but anything that's just a normal vegetable, fruit, meat, dairy, anything that has water content in it, it's going to dehydrate and freeze dry pretty well. So yeah, I'm really excited about using this machine and putting it into part of our homestead preservation techniques. So far, so good. Like I said earlier in the video, we did have a hiccup with one of the wires being disconnected early on, and that has been fixed, and obviously the machine is working well because we have been able to crank out batch after batch after batch of food from the freeze dryer. So yeah, so currently I'm going to continue working on the fresh things that are coming out of the garden, and then as I have breaks in between from those, I will work on some of the frozen items that are in our freezer, like our peppers from last year. We have lots of mixed vegetables in the freezer, just from the grocery store. Mixed vegetables, corn, green beans, all those things. I feel like it will be better to take those out of the freezer, put them on the shelf in dry form. We can still use them as a quick meal option, just like we would out of the freezer. And so I think not having to rely upon power to preserve those things is going to help us in the long run. We can save that room for some other item like a meat, or we can just unplug that freezer and not use it, and save on the energy cost. So yeah, we just, we're trying to figure out better ways of preserving and utilizing our crops and things that we find from the store on a deal. So this freeze dryer is really going to help us out with that. So again, I'll leave the information on it down below. Go check them out if this is something that you're interested in. I highly recommend it. All right, guys, that is enough about our freeze dryer in this video. I hope you found this interesting. I'm definitely going to be bringing more freeze dryer, not recipes per se, but the things that we freeze dry. I'm going to show you what we're doing because I think it's a really, really cool household and homestead tool. If you can invest in one, I highly suggest that you do. It will really pay for itself in a really short amount of time because you're going to be able to save so many things that you would normally be throwing away. So yeah, I hope y'all found this informative, and I can't wait to see you guys next time here at Row & Co Farms.